Hello. Yeah, Northside baby, man. Y'all niggas can't get rid of me. I'm like cancer. You know what I mean? You can't get rid of the cancer, you know what I mean? I'm harder than all you.
Everything surrounding Offset has been in disarray since Cardi B gave birth in November 2025. Instagram live tirades, calls for a DNA test, and even a shooting that sent him to the hospital. And that video of Cardi and Stefan Diggs. This strange narrative has one more twist. Allow me to explain. The first wave, the baby, and the supposed post. Since 2017, Cardi B and Offset have been lawfully wed. They had one of the most well-documented relationships in hip-hop. Millions of people saw the proposals, chart runs, public admissions of cheating, and reconciliations in real time on video. Together, they created a household, raised 3 children, and maintained a public persona despite their open division. Offset crashed her Rolling Loud gig in 2018 while holding roses and pleading for forgiveness. He accused her of cheating on him in a post that he later removed in 2023. Later that year, when she was at her most vulnerable, she sobbed live on Instagram over being played. The pattern of eruption and reconciliation had been going on for years by the time Cardi filed for divorce in 2024, and all that had already transpired between them weighed heavily on the divorce when it finally happened. She presented it as clean when she filed, claiming that neither party was paying child support. Every parent would take care of their own children on their own. She clarified on Instagram Live that it had nothing to do with a recent instance of cheating or a single explosive incident. She claimed not to be devastated. She wanted to leave before things got worse because she was sick of fighting.
Sometimes you just want to leave. What is so bad about that? Why y'all want it to be a baby? Why y'all want it to be, oh, he cheated again? Sometimes you want to stop it before it gets to that.
However, the divorce was still pending. Cardi made her romance with NFL receiver Stefan Diggs public in late 2024. Diggs was one of the league's more well-known receivers during the preceding 10 years. He had previously played for the Minnesota Vikings, Buffalo Bills, Houston Texans, and New England Patriots. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in Buffalo and 4 Pro Bowls were the kind of accomplishments that kept a name in the public eye outside of sports. As soon as the relationship became public, it swiftly made its way through the entertainment media. She revealed her pregnancy with his child on CBS Mornings in September 2025. It was a straightforward announcement. Without hesitation, she identified Diggs as the father. She gave birth to a son in November 2025. A child born during the continued marriage raised legal concerns because the divorce was not formalized.
Cardi B just had a baby with Stefan Diggs. But since she is still legally married to Offset, Offset is legally the baby's father. And Stefan Diggs just had another baby by another girl like a month or 2 ago.
So this is what's crazy.
Screenshots of what looked to be an Instagram story from Offset's account that said, "My kid, LOL," a clear allusion to the baby, went viral shortly after the birth. The post immediately went viral. It was used by all entertainment venues. Offset's team described it as wholly fake and said that any remarks made about the baby on social media at the time were false. Cardi, on the other hand, wrote on X that she had been intimidated and tormented for more than a year, to the point where she thought her life was in danger. She claimed that she had been holding receipts in an X spot and that if she disregarded the private abuse, it continued to escalate into public attacks. She asked people to go away from her. The loop continued, despite the denial. Separate from the infant itself, the claim and counterclaim created their own headline. And Offset was already on Instagram Live making statements about the child, saying it looked like him, laying out timelines, performing the certainty of someone who had decided the paternity question was already answered in his favor, regardless of what the record said. In the same year, he had also taken a seat and recorded the reasons why the marriage had failed.
I was definitely not perfect in this situation. You know what I mean? I made a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that I did wrong. I should respect her way more. You know what I mean? I made bad decisions as a man, like stepping out, like gotta take that on the chin. Like
the acknowledgement and the Instagram behavior were happening simultaneously. One was a man who had sat down and said he had been selfish, that he should have done better, that the failure of the marriage was something he had to own. The other was a man on Instagram Live claiming ownership of a child born to another man while the divorce was still in progress. They were both the same individual. It was no longer a clean divorce. The loudest shots had not yet hit because the baby had changed everything. The threats, the tape, the diss. On October 31st, 2025, while Cardi was visibly pregnant, Offset released a surprise album called Haunted by Fame. The timing was deliberate. Halloween, while the woman he was still legally married to was carrying another man's child. He rapped, "How the fuck you leave Jordan for Rodman?" on the song No Sweat, establishing Diggs as the amusing but ultimately supporting cast member who was never the main act and himself as the franchise. He included lyrics informing Cardi that she was going berserk for moving on and bars alluding to being married when a baby was being born. The stanza quickly became popular, sparked a surge of memes, and made it quite evident that Offset would not keep silent about this. He was on a platform. The CD was the first official declaration of his position on the whole matter, and he still had a voice. Cardi didn't specifically address the song. She allowed the pregnancy to continue its cycle while maintaining her concentration on it. However, a posture had been proclaimed by the music, and the next part of that posture was about to come from an unexpected direction. The subsequent escalation occurred through messier and more difficult to contain routes. Influencer Selena Powell revealed what she called a screen-recorded FaceTime call with Offset on her podcast, Two Girls from Mars, in January 2026. Powell's complaints against him were documented. The FaceTime was part of a larger battle she was publicly displaying, and she had claimed he owed her money. Depending on who was judging it, the context may either increase or decrease the audio's credibility. The reach of the footage itself was undeniable. In a matter of hours, the audio reached every platform. In the recording, Offset directly threatens Stefon Diggs, who is widely believed to be his target. He describes what he would do if he caught Buddy, beat him up, rob him, or shoot him in the knees to terminate his football career. He chuckled during some of it, because it didn't seem like someone was kidding. The laughter made it more frightening rather than less. It came across as someone who had already determined that the hazards were unavoidable and was at ease with that conclusion. Offset's team never made a complete public rejection or attested to the veracity of the tape. There was no legal challenge. There was no declaration that took it out of circulation. The clip sat in the ecosystem, being pulled out and replayed every time new developments broke, functioning as a recurring exhibit in the public record being assembled around the idea that Offset's behavior had crossed from social media noise into something with real-world stakes. In the divorce process, Cardi had previously proven her allegations of harassment. Whether or not the audio was completely validated, it provided that argument with auditory proof that went beyond statement and was audible to the general public. Diggs, throughout all of this, said nothing.
About my personal life? I told you about that. We won't talk too much about my personal life, but I heard about it.
One word to a reporter, no engagement, no diss, no live. One of the key themes of the entire story was the disparity between Offset's productivity and his restraint. Then came April 5-7, 2026. Over the course of those 3 days, Offset appeared on Instagram Live several times in sessions that resulted in the majority of the story's snipped footage. He claimed he and Cardi were back together. He said Diggs had cheated on her over 8 times, including during her pregnancy, and had left her alone with all the children. He claimed he already knew the baby was his since it looked exactly like him. He predicted Diggs would end up paying $500,000 a month in child support, framing it as an outcome he was not just expecting, but looking forward to. Then, in real time, he made physical threats against Diggs on television, mentioning knees and destroying a football career. The precise words that had been spoken months before in the Selena Powell recording. The gap between the public Instagram Live and the private leaked call had now entirely closed. On April 5th, the lives ran.
Hello. Yeah, Northside baby, man. Y'all niggas can't get rid of me. I'm like cancer. You know what I mean? You can't get rid of the cancer, you know what I mean? I'm harder than all you.
Offset was shot outside of Florida Casino on April 6th. On April 7th, he continued to publish. The same rotating window had the audio, the music, the life, and a shooting. Offset files a lawsuit. A version of this story, a disverse, a podcast leak, or social media outbursts, stays in the entertainment section. However, one development made it more difficult to ignore. As part of the protracted divorce, Offset formally requested DNA, paternity testing for at least 2 of Cardi's children, including the infant who is generally believed to be Diggs's kid, in court records dated February 25, 2026. This was not a claim made on Instagram. This was a court-processed legal document bearing his name. Around April 9th or 10th, 2026, the records were made public. The decision divided the request when TMZ revealed the information. Diggs's son's DNA test was turned down. The door shut. Cardi's other child's DNA test was approved. The child's exact identity was kept private by redacting birth dates. The results were not made available to the general public. The document attested to the fact that what Offset was expressing in real time was also his official, court partially recognized legal position. He wasn't merely using Instagram to claim the child. With supporting paperwork, lawyers, and court records, he was building a legal case around it. One door was blocked by the Diggs baby's rejection. The other child's test was approved, but it left a question unanswered and hidden from the public. Regardless of the outcome, the filing verified that the legal approach and Instagram behavior were moving in the same direction at the same time. This was not just noise from social media that coincided with court filings. They were deployed concurrently in other arenas, but they were in the same posture. The divorce itself had already deviated significantly from the initial clean split narrative. Offset was requesting spousal support in addition to paternity, which was a clear departure from the no child support arrangement Cardi had mentioned in her initial filing.
So Cardi B's divorce, remember when she filed, she came out and even said how, like, look, they decided to break things off. Their plans were a pretty smooth breakup, right? A smooth divorce. She said, no child support. We're each going to take care of our kids on our own. And it was clean. But now things have changed because Offset is requesting for spousal support.
Cardi has a net worth of between $80 and $100 million. Offset's was more like $30 million. Additionally, he was asking for a custody agreement that made her house the primary residence. Many observers interpreted the combined picture, spousal support request, paternity filing, custody frame, as a legal tactic to maintain Cardi's structural involvement throughout the processes rather than attain a clear separation. There was already an order prohibiting disparagement. It was charmingly unclear if it had any real impact on the Selena Powell audio, the album verse, or the Instagram lives. As the dispute progressed through the courts, both sides were legally prohibited from uttering disparaging remarks about one another in public. The social media activity and the legal apparatus were operating concurrently in what seemed to be completely different realities. In reaction, Cardi encountered increasingly unvarnished lives and tour performances. She expressed her weariness with the entire process, citing health issues including high blood pressure, the challenges of traveling while handling the divorce, and the fact that she now had 4 children. She changed a line in bongos for a Chicago stop on the Little Miss Drama tour, alluding to her baby's father in a way that the internet quickly analyzed. Midway through her performance at Madison Square Garden, she unintentionally rapped, a line addressing Offset by name. She caught herself and made a face that went viral within an hour. She continuously refuted the idea that Offset's marital problems were related to his financial difficulties. She declared in public that she had assisted him in managing his finances during their time together and that she could not be held accountable for the current situation he was facing. Both questions were left open in different ways by the DNA verdict, which was given for the other child, but refused for the Diggs infant. The story took an unexpected turn outside a Florida casino while the courts processed everything. Bad bets and bullets. The casino was never merely incidental. The rest of this was revolving around this axis. Additionally, the pattern of behavior it represented had been developing for well over a year before to the shooting in ways that were public, documented, and legally significant. Offset established a $100,000 credit account at Detroit's Motor City Casino Hotel in March 2024. In one session, he lost everything. According to their agreement, the money was missing when the casino sought to retrieve it from the connected account. On March 30, 2026, the casino filed a lawsuit alleging fraud and breach of contract. 4 days before to his shooting outside another casino, that lawsuit was filed. The timing overlap wasn't accidental. It was a portrayal of a person who lived within the same range of options over several years and locations. Rapper Lil J was the link between gambling and violence. J went public in early 2025, first on Twitch and later in interviews, detailing what he claimed to have seen Offset doing at a casino, losing a lot of money, getting scared, and asking random people for Cash App money to continue gambling. According to Che, he lent Offset a total of $10,000 and never received it back. Instead of describing it as a casual night out, he classified it as a gambling problem. His narrative gained momentum beyond the usual beef framing because of its specifics, the quantity, the obvious fright, the desperation. Those who would have written it off as a fake argument had information to consider and a consistent narrative from Jay's appearances on many platforms. Offset did not respond with a measured denial. He made a threat to Jay. Jay retaliated with a threat. Over the course of 2025, the conversation intensified in a way that felt less like two adults resolving a dispute and more like a fuse being lit in slow motion, obvious to anybody watching, advancing toward a conclusion that both sides' rhetoric had been hinting at for months. Lil J was present when Offset was shot outside the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Florida on April 6, 2026, and he was taken into custody for disorderly behavior. His group denied being directly involved in the actual shooting. The incident and the death issue were linked by the police. It was a non-life-threatening leg shot wound. At the time, he was outside posing for photos with admirers. He made it out alive. According to reports, Cardi B was the first person he called while in the hospital. She picked up despite the DNA filing, the lives, and all in between. Court filings do not make 8 years and 3 children together meaningless. the relationship remained intact. They used to look nothing like this.
What time is it? It's 7 o'clock. So what time is it like in New York? 10. I feel like we have literally everything. I don't know what to do with money anymore.
Cardi confronted Lil J directly on Instagram Live, informing him that she had clear photos of him at the incident and that arrests would be made before the end of the week. It wasn't the enthusiasm of someone observing from a secure distance. It was the enthusiasm of someone who still had a stake in the result. Someone who had drawn a line between witnessing Offset's self-destruction and seeing others around him get away with it. Offset's post-shooting statement had a phrase about life being a gamble. Given what the gambling habit had actually cost him throughout 2024 and 2025, it was immediately and widely criticized online as either profound unintended irony or a total lack of self-awareness. Lil Yachty acknowledged losing $8 to $9 million while gambling over the course of around 40 hours in a 2024 interview that had been making the rounds in the weeks prior to the shooting. He claimed he had pushed himself to quit at that point. The Che loan, the April 6th parking lot shooting, and the Detroit casino lawsuit all indicated that the stopping point had not held. Offset owed Des Bryant money after a wager, according to Bryant. An unpaid Super Bowl wager was mentioned by Ebro Darden. On their own, none of the assertions were disastrous. Modest sums could be easily contested. However, in April 2026, the accumulation, along with the $100,000 Detroit lawsuit, the Che loan dispute, and a parking lot shooting outside a casino, provided numerous outlets with the information to characterize the gambling as a documented, persistent pattern with escalating real-world consequences rather than as sporadic recklessness. The casino had evolved beyond a setting at the time of the shooting. The debt, the threats, the meat, and now the hospital were all connected by this through line. There was footage from Washington, D.C. within 48 hours of the incident. That changed the whole narrative, what the video truly depicts. Stefon Diggs entered Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. 2 days after Offset was admitted to the hospital for a stop on Cardi's Little Miss Drama tour. His mother, brother, and family accompanied him. A purposeful choice of companions. That seemed more like a man making a statement about his position and the people he was standing with than someone attempting to remain low. They performed a dance. They watched the program. They went to throw social for an after-party following the performance. Outside, paparazzi were waiting. Diggs and Cardi had a conversation. She climbed into his white sports vehicle. Together, they drove off. The video from April 8, 2026 went viral more quickly than anything else in this narrative. Months had passed since the baby was born. Each of the leaks and lives had produced waves of its own. However, 48 hours after Offset was admitted to the hospital, Cardi's departure from a concert in Diggs's car provided the storyline with a new visual timestamp that reset the clock on a narrative that never really halted. A tight picture of the present that condensed 6 months of conflict into a single frame. The title refers to this new footage. It's true, it's new, and it's doing just what that type of video does. The clips had a complex backstory. Despite recording over 1,000 receiving yards in 2025, his first 1,000-yard season since 2023, Stefon Diggs was cut by the New England Patriots in early March 2026. After only playing 8 games in 2024 due to an ACL tear, he mentored young quarterback Drake May, helped the team go far in the playoffs, and demonstrated that he could still produce at a high level when healthy. His 2026 contract number was more than the franchise could handle, so they cut him nonetheless for cap considerations. He was a 32-year-old free agent who was still unsigned as of mid-April 2026. General managers throughout the league were discreetly weighing his market value versus his tabloid image. His on-field performance in 2025 had not been negatively impacted by the Cardi situation, but the commotion it caused complicated an already challenging free agency calculation. From the September 2025 pregnancy announcement to the April 2026 concert, Cardi and Diggs' relationship had not been easy. According to speculations, Cardi had withdrawn due to trust difficulties by Super Bowl 2026. In 2025, a number of women came out with children linked to Diggs, some of whose timelines coincided with Cardi's pregnancy. Model Aylin Lara's DNA. Paternity suit against Diggs was confirmed in November 2025, the same month Cardi gave birth to her kid, making it the most well-known case. The picture was further complicated by reports of further births with other women in 2025. It was said that they had unfollowed one another. A breakup received a lot of media attention. The lyrics, the emotional lives, and the stage remarks about being too mature to be played were all part of Cardi's tour, which had been a prolonged processing of that betrayal. On the surface, everything appeared to be finished. She then entered his vehicle. When you compare the footage to the entire record, what does it truly depict? Regardless of what any breakup report regarding the Super Bowl period says, it demonstrates that Cardi and Diggs are still in each other's orbit. It demonstrates that the man Offset has been threatening since October 2025 attended her performance with his family and drove her home 2 days after she was admitted to the hospital. The video is authentic, it's new, and it's doing just what the title says. The single conveys a more nuanced narrative, but it lacks the clear causal sequence that the title suggests. Footage drops. Offset goes crazy. Before the baby was born, the Halloween album was released. In January, the Selena Powell tape became viral. In February, the court document was filed. The 5th and 6th were the dates of the April lives. The DC, the lives that make up the majority of the Offset Goes Crazy content, actually predated the viral clip that the title regards as the trigger, since the footage that creates the new footage framing did not go online until the 8th. Additionally, it is worthwhile to consider the results of Offset's months of constant motion. His live claims of reconciliation were not verified. The newborn's paternity, which he claimed in court, was rejected. Diggs continued to face verbal threats. The request for spousal support is still pending. None of his public actions produced the result he claimed to be working toward. Instead of Diggs, they produced film of him, of his actions rather than his outcomes. Diggs remained silent the entire time. No clapback, no live, and no diss. He offered reporters one sentence while taking his mother to a performance. Not a single frame of engagement footage has been provided to Offset by the individual who was questioned in court, intimidated on a recorded call, and portrayed as the antagonist in a diss tune. The most important strategic choice anyone in this story has taken is to maintain that discipline in the face of 6 months of unrelenting provocation that would have broken most people's resolve. Although, after new footage went viral, condenses months of ongoing self-generated turbulence into a single cause and effect frame that the timeline cannot support. Offset Going Crazy is an accurate description of the behavior the record depicts. The DC. The most recent data point, not the D. Source is the footage. Before the cameras showed Cardi getting into Diggs's car, the behavior was already underway. The divorce is still pending. The second child's DNA test results are not available to the public. Diggs is not signed. The tour is still going on. The video continues to play. Everything that goes along with it also does. Tranquility.